More and more people are buying the Canon EOS M to shoot Magic Lantern RAW, which is great. They want to get the cinematic look in a small mirrorless body, and I mean, at the price point, you can't really go wrong. However, the workflow can sometimes feel quite cumbersome depending on the steps that you take. So in today's video, I'm going to share my up-to-date Magic Lantern RAW workflow on the Canon EOS M so that you guys can hopefully get something out of this and start editing your videos. Now, when people think of Magic Lantern RAW, they think of big file sizes, but the way that I've overcome this is by using hard drives. Now, this is a 4 terabyte hard drive from the company Toshiba, and this has worked really well for all the files that I've had to export and put onto this thing. I mean, if I had to store these things on my iMac, it would definitely not hold it, especially if I had to edit and export. My Final Cut would just say disk is full and it will just not respond. So if you're using a laptop or a computer or a Mac and you don't have enough space, something like this is definitely going to come in handy when you're using Magic Lantern RAW. For some of you guys who are new to this and don't know what app we use for Magic Lantern RAW, the app is called MLV app, and this is what we use to edit and export our Magic Lantern RAW files. It's a bit like Photoshop or Lightroom where you can adjust the luminance and the saturation, sharpness, contrast, but with a few different features that are more video centric. Alright guys, now I'm going to show you my workflow for Magic Lantern RAW. We're going to use MLV app and DaVinci Resolve, so let's get into it. Hey guys and welcome, Zeke here, and look at this. I've got my MLV files .mlv. This is what Magic Lantern RAW saves the information coming out of the EOS M as. So I've got these few sample files that I'm going to go ahead and copy into the MLV app. Alright, so this is pretty much MLV app, and this is what we use to, transcode our raw files and then export them. And we've got all these options over here. The more you play around with Magic Lantern RAW, you get used to all these settings. I've done tutorials in the past. I'll leave a link in the description below, and it'll pretty much run you through all these different settings. So you got exposure that you can change, contrast, temperature, and then a whole range of different ones. So the more you play around with this, the more familiar you get with the settings. You have your gradation curves, so you can play around with the curves. I'll pretty much just leave that. And then you got your profile presets, so you can have, Lexlog C or Slog 3, Rec 709, and these will adjust it automatically for you. But once you enable these profiles, all these will be disabled. But if they are disabled, just allow creative adjustments over here. Tick that, and then you'll be able to adjust these again. So my old workflow was going Alexa Log C, and then wide gamut, and then playing around with these, and then adjusting sharpness a little. Everything has pretty much changed since then. What I'm going to do is just reset this, so Command, Alt, and R, and it pretty much resets every single setting. So if you go to the Settings tab, my old way of exporting is Apple ProRes quadruple 4, and you have a ton of different options, H.264, different flavors of ProRes, 422, if you want to have smaller file size. In all the videos I've done in the past, the short films and travel videos, they've all been done with Apple ProRes quadruple 4, and with this you get a lot of flexibility in post. But in this video I want to show you my workflow for Cinema DNG, so go ahead and click that, and you can do default naming scheme, so it will just use this default name. Otherwise you can go ahead and do DaVinci Resolve if that's something that you're used to. Now you can see that when we select Cinema DNG uncompressed, resize is not available, so you can't resize the footage. So if I do ProRes, you can definitely resize it or upscale it to 4K 3840 by 2160, and you can also export audio, HDR blend. But if you do Cinema DNG uncompressed, you don't get the HDR function or the resize. You do, however, get frame rate override if that's something that you want, but the export audio is disabled. So you pretty much can't export audio if you choose to override your frame rate. In this sample clip, I don't want audio, so I'm just going to leave frame rate override 24 frames per second. Now this was shot on the EOS M with the Canon 10-18mm. If you want to double check, you just press show clip information, and then you can see a shot at 2.8K with the Canon 10-18mm, captured at 140 frames, 23.981 frames per second. So all your information's there if you need to access it. Here's some other shots that I got with the EOS M and the 2.8K RAW mode. Now here's the thing, down here you get playback. So if you press the play button, you can see that it's very choppy. It's going frame by frame. This is 1 frame per second, so it's very slow. And if I go to another scene and press play, you can see playback is 1 frame per second. Otherwise, another way that you can bypass this and get better frames per second is to minimize the screen. I'll show you in a sec. So if I do this and press play, you can see that I'm getting more frames per second. Alright, so now it's time for export. Let's go ahead and export these files as DNG. Now DNG is a form of RAW, and it's just a smaller file size with most of the benefits. So let's go ahead, check Cinema DNG uncompressed, and we're going to go ahead and export the clips. DNG is pretty much the quickest export. If you can do ProRes and stuff like that, it's going to take a while. If you have 100 frames or less, I would encourage ProRes or DNG. Otherwise, if you have a lot of frames, if you've recorded for more than 1 minute, I'd highly recommend Cinema DNG. Alright, export is ready. Alright, so I have DaVinci Resolve open, and here are my exported files. Go ahead, drag them into the timeline. And there you go, these are pretty much your files, and you can see the quality is absolutely fantastic. If I just make it full screen for a second, look at that quality, really, really remarkable. And you can see it's quite flat in comparison to MLV app, you know, you got your bright colors. That's because you need to work on it yourself, so you need to add curves and contrast, exposure. You need to do all that yourself. Alright, so this is pretty much my workflow, getting the DNG files into DaVinci Resolve, and then what I do is export from DaVinci Resolve into Final Cut, and we'll go through that. So just take a look at my settings in DaVinci. In Camera Raw, I have Cinema DNG, Full Res, and then Camera Metadata. No need to apply pre-tone curve. For color management, you can play around with these other stuff, but I just leave out DaVinci YRGB, and then I use my color space as Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. Image scaling sharper. Master settings, I set my timeline resolution to 3840 by 2160. And again, these are pretty much my settings, so if you want to change a few things, that's completely up to you. Alright, so go ahead and click save. Now I'm just going to pretty much do a rough grade. I usually spend more time, but I can probably leave that for another video. So this is our timeline, and this is where we edit our color. Alright, so here's the magic. You can see that it's quite flat. All you got to do is just color space Rec 709, set your gamma to Rec 709, and there you go, all corrected. You get your exposure settings, you get everything in here, you get sharpness. I pretty much leave sharpness at 0, but I mean, it's completely up to you. Midtone detail. If I press Command F on my iMac, look at those beautiful colors, really, really nice. This is pretty much why I've made the switch more so to DaVinci rather than grading straight in MLV app. So if I go ahead and copy that, I can pretty much paste it to this. So Command and 1, and then paste it to my other clip, Command 1, and you can see the colors are right there. I don't have to do much grading. So looking at another clip, decode using clip, leave color space Rec 709, gamma, set that to Rec 709, and voila, all you gotta do is change these settings and exposure, and you're pretty much good to go. Now keep an eye on these three. So if you want your blacks to be black, then you gotta change your lift to just the bottom over here. If it goes past it, that means you're pretty much crushing your blacks. So you want all three colors just to sit on that baseline, and then you can adjust your exposure to about this top line over here. And then from here you can adjust your saturation or color boost depending on how much color information you want. Now you tell me, how long did this take me to edit? Not long at all. If I can do it, you guys can do it. Now if your highlights are overblown, what you can do is just enable highlight recovery. I don't need it because it was properly exposed here. Now a lot of people use a ton of different nodes. I just stick to one. I keep it nice and simple, and then I'm ready to export. So go ahead and select the Deliver tab. File name, you can name it to whatever you want. And then resolution, just make sure that's 3840 by 2160. And then go ahead and select File. Now this is important because if you do single clip, all these are going to be exported into one single video. You don't want that. You want each individual video. So to enable that, just tick individual clips. So enable that one, and then you can just custom name your file. You can also put into a subfolder. So if I want to put, Zeek export, it would save into a folder of this name. So after you've done this, you can go ahead and press browse, and you can save it to whatever destination you want. For me, I'll just save it onto my hard drive because I have 4 terabytes, 4000 gig, and have lots of space to spare. And for the important part, the format, I select QuickTime, and then type, you can select different flavors of ProRes. So you can do quadruple 4, 422, 422 HQ, high quality. For me, I just do quadruple 4. That's my preference. And then I'm ready to export. So go ahead and select add to render queue. Here it is, and then you're ready to start render. So this is going to export to wherever you saved your destination to be. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's how easy it is to get really, really great quality out of Magic Lantern Raw on the Canon EOS M. And you can see it didn't take me that long at all. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's my workflow for Magic Lantern Raw on the Canon EOS M. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.